Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Disc Connected. Tonight, I am visited by somebody that I haven't had on the channel in quite some time. My friend Eric, the Asian movie enthusiast. Eric, how we doing?
Doing very well. Glad to be here.
I am glad, and I'm here because this I'm calling my guide to Asian cinema. And obviously, you go to the expert, you go to the source, you go to the infinite well of knowledge, and you are the one for Asian movie and everything related to Asian cinema. I wanted to ask first and foremost if you could just describe your channel, what you do on YouTube for everybody else, because I'm sure most people here subscribe to it, but just in case they haven't.
Yes, I'm Eric, the Asian movie enthusiast. And the whole point of my channel is basically to give recommendations for movies. Basically, a lot of East Asian stuff. Japan, China, Hong Kong, South Korea are the main countries and areas that I cover. And then, I'll dabble in some of the Southeast Asian stuff like Indonesia and the Philippines. But it's basically just to give recommendations, to give you just enough information about each movie to determine whether or not you would like to watch the film or enjoy it. So that's the basic premise of the channel.
Some of those Southern Asian dabblings are always my favorite on your channel because they come out of nowhere.
Hmm.
So what, just to anybody that's getting first into Asian cinema and maybe they've never been into it, what would you say are some of the main touch points for somebody that's brand new, wet behind the ears, trying to really discover Asian cinema?
Yeah, I think if we go by era, in terms of classic films, I'm personally most familiar with Japanese classic films. They seem to be more readily available than like South Korean or Chinese films like,
Right.
1950 or 1960. So there's a lot of good ones too. And I think, Criterion's one of the labels that really kind of explored a lot of those. And yeah, there's plenty of Japanese films, even some stuff you could find on YouTube from the 1920s that's really interesting to watch. So Japan is like a huge filmography of movies you could check
Hmm.
out. So that the classics, I think Japan's very strong. I can't really have that much of an opinion on the other areas because I'm not as familiar. But
Right.
then if you get more recent, and it's really interesting when you look at how certain industries develop over time, because South Korea, I think, really found its stride in the mid to late 90s. And a lot of their modern stuff is just fantastic. And I think they do have a good amount of art house indie style films, but a lot of their films are like mainstream, kind of easy to get into, even for people who aren't familiar with
Right.
international film. And then obviously you get Hong Kong, which historically has been very genre centric in terms of thrillers, action films, and horror films, things like that. So, let's see, who else am I? Oh, actually, mainland China does have some stuff to offer as well. Historically, they've been more like in the lower budget indie type
Right.
stuff, but they've ramped up their budgets in recent years, as everybody knows. So, yeah, I think those are like the main spots to hit.
And over time, if we were looking at classic directors, obviously a lot of people have heard of like Kurosawa, and of course more of the modern ones like Bong Joon Ho, and even Kurosawa's family is getting into filmmaking on a lot of those. So, what would you say are some of the ones that people should watch first, specifically work from directors?
Well, I mean, obviously, Akira Kurosawa is big, and I think a lot of people like him. I actually don't like him as much as a lot of people do, but
Right.
I do, I do would recommend that as a nice starter point for the classics. I do really like Yasujiro Ozu. I think his acting that he gets from his actors is very naturalistic, even though he operates within a wheelhouse a lot. A lot of his films are a little bit samey in some sense, but he has done some other stuff that's a little bit not unconventional even for him. But even if you go through his filmography, you watch a few every once in a while, it's really good. And
Right.
then in terms of other classic directors, I would say Hideo Gosha made some really good samurai stuff. A lot of the Criterion stuff, Shohei Imamura,
Yep.
Masahiro Shinoda. There's a bunch of them to explore.
We mentioned Criterion twice already, but they are not the only ones that have dipped into Asian cinema a lot. Obviously, a lot of people have their eyes on Eureka, 88 Films, and Arrow, especially over the last couple of years. Are there any specifically that catch your eye? And I on purpose left out Third Window Films because I think they deserve a very specific mention after that.
Okay. So I would say in terms of labels or films within those labels.
Let's go labels first. If somebody
Okay.
were to one of the more approachable labels for people in the
Yeah.
Western developed world.
Yeah. Eureka, Arrow, 88, Criterion. We'll talk about Third Window, but I think like if I'm looking at my list from the past few years, looks like Eureka's really hit Hong Kong cinema really hard.
Really hard.
Arrow has like a mix, a lot of Japanese,
Yep.
some Hong Kong, and even some Korean. They've dabbled in. 88, a lot of Hong Kong. Criterion we mentioned, a lot of Japanese stuff. Well Go USA is another one,
Yep.
right? A lot of Hong Kong stuff. They also have some Korean stuff in there. And then there's some newer ones, right? There's Error 4444, which has only done a few releases. Looks like they're going to go the Japan, Hong Kong cult cinema route. Mondo Macabro's been around for a while. They do a lot of cult stuff, and they even dabble in the Indonesian stuff, which I find really interesting. Again, we're going kind of old school with like Media Blasters and Tokyo Shock from back in the day.
Yep.
They have a lot of DVDs out. And obviously Tartan Asia Extreme from back in the day with those all kinds of cult films.
All kinds of them.
A few more Unearthed Classics has come out with some Unearthed films. They do like Evil Dead Trap, some Cat 3 stuff. Bud Blue is one, I think they're from Australia, and they did some tricked out stuff like Bittersweet Life and My Dear Desperado, some Korean stuff. And then it looks like Chameleon Films is another one that's been coming through with some Hong Kong Johnny Toe titles.
Glad you brought them up.
Yeah, and then you'll get an occasional one here and there, but like Discotech Media released Uzumaki outside of their anime stuff. So yeah, we have a decent variety of different labels here and decent coverage, I think, of like the main industries.
So based on everything you've seen, what are let's first start with genres. What are some of your favorite genres that you think Asian cinema has really nailed that people need to look into?
If I had to pick genres, it's kind of a tie between action and horror for me. So like the Hong Kong stuff from back in the day, and even some of their recent stuff, so they've had some pretty good action flicks. I love my action movies. And with horror, obviously, I think Japan has really kind of been on the forefront of that, even going all the way back, and I think all the way through the 2010s, they continued to contribute. Although the distribution for those films is tailed off a little bit in the U.S.
Right.
So action and horror, huge. But I think like dramas, just basic dramas, are just. I mean, Japan's classic films, a lot of them could be classified as dramas, and a lot of South Korean contemporary films could be classified as dramas, and they do a whole variety of stuff. Like one subgenre I really like is like the coming of age film.
Same.
You give like high school kids and stuff like that, or like school kids. As I just find really interesting that character arc, and they've South Korea and Japan I think has nailed that a number of times. I'm trying to think of like stuff that they're weak on. I would say depending on the region, Hong Kong drama. I mean, dramas from they do have some really good ones, but overall, if you're talking back in the heyday, drama was probably lower on the list of the genre stuff. I would say like Japan big budget blockbuster films. Unless they're like samurai era stuff like Rurouni Kenshin, a lot of times they're kind of hit or miss. I think they need to up their game in terms of like contemporary, blockbuster filmmaking. And South Korea, they're pretty balanced, I think. They're pretty balanced overall.
I would agree. Nowadays, if we were looking at more modern stuff, who do you think currently is on the forefront? Would you say South Korea is like leading the pack right now?
That's kind of hard because I think South Korea was at their pinnacle in the 2000s. They had more of a variety of creativity as well. A lot of their stuff now is even more mainstream than it used to be. In the 2000s, you could find some really oddball stuff.
Right.
And you still can, but it's not as prevalent. Even one of my favorite genres were romantic comedies from South Korea. I ate those up. But it seems like most of that production of that subgenre is in television now. And I don't know, are we too cynical now for romantic comedies? I don't know. It just seems like the industry just got like some of the better ones in recent years all involve like infidelity and and like stuff like that. It's not like the older, almost like idealistic style Korean films are getting less and less. And I think the
Right.
creativity is dipped a little bit in recent years. So I always go back to Japan because they always have like a nice variety of stuff coming out. I would have to pick Japan if I really had to.
That makes sense. I bet that they have like one of the larger budgets overall for filmmaking comparatively. They do a lot of really interesting things, especially uh, on the genre side. Obviously, they do some great work, but that's across the board. Everybody seems to excel pretty well with the highlights, at least in Asian cinema.
Hmm.
The low lights, they can get kind of low. I I will say I'm always excited when I'm watching your reviews, and one of the last things you say is this is available on streaming and on physical media. Where, other than the obvious labels that are mentioned earlier in this episode, where are you getting these physical releases? Because a lot of them have zero representation in the US. They have zero representation in Region B stuff. They just seem to not be available anywhere. So where are you getting them?
Yeah, outside of the main labels, I use some Hong Kong distribution channels like Yes Asia, DDD House. I use a lot for my Hong Kong movies, and I think they have like a US and a Hong Kong website. But a lot of them are like Region 3 DVD stuff, and but Hong Kong Blu-rays are Region A though, which is nice
Yep.
because that's the same as the US. So DDD House, Yes Asia. If I'm desperate for Japanese horror, I just buy the Region 2 Japanese DVD with no subtitles. And I usually get that off of Yes Asia, Amazon Japan. Sometimes it'll be on eBay. Yeah, those are really the main spots that I look for. And then occasionally, if I ever on vacation in Japan, I'll go to Book Off and grab a few. But yeah, those are really where I get them.
How many times have you been to Japan?
9 times.
Whoo! I thought that was a smaller number. That's awesome. What are I mean, some of the things that you see in these films obviously have to be influenced by what you've experienced over there. What are some things that you've been able to take part in that really sort of pepper your love for the culture?
Well, the food is great. And
I would
actually,
agree there.
I love movies and TV shows based on food, like dramas, like almost like soap opera style stuff with food and cooking is
Yep.
like a main theme of conflict. Like there was the Grand Chef or whatever from South Korea. It was a really good TV show. Pasta was another Korean one about some Korean guy who opens an or buys an Italian restaurant in Korea, and he tries to make it like legit Italian instead of fusion. There's all this controversy. So yeah, that's actually a piece of it. But I would say there's you get a little bit of a feel for some of the culturally specific stuff, like even just the idea of kind of just not causing problems, not
Right.
creating waves is kind of a thing in Japan specifically. And when I'm over there, I've seen this type of thing happen. So for example, I was at a park, just walking around, and there was a group of school kids. They were like sitting down on the park area, and one of the kids was doing some type of presentation, and the teacher was standing there, and some other kid from probably some other school like walked by and said something to a kid, and the kid got up and was ready to throw down, and like his like schoolmate was holding him back from like throwing down with this other kid who was like walking away and said something, and the whole class just kept taking the class. The,
Nice.
the girl at the front just kept doing her presentation, and nobody even looked at him. I was like, gee, it was just kind of odd. But like little things like that, you get like a feel for, and you kind of when you see it in the movies, it clicks a little bit more.
Right. And I'm sure stuff like that has sort of led to some building of tension in some of these movies because they're used to things just carrying on or pretending like other things aren't happening. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, I'm curious, and I didn't really prep you on this one. What are some of the better watches that you've been watching recently?
Oh yeah, I watched oh, I got it right here. I have a few examples right here actually. The Korean thriller Midnight.
Nice.
And it was pretty cool. It's about a deaf mute girl who's stalked by a serial killer. I thought that one was really cool for a
That's
recent
a
Korean thriller.
Eureka release, right?
Mm, yeah.
I
Yep.
will throw out for people in the US that is also available from, I believe it's Dread,
Mm,
uh, through Epic Pictures, and right now it just dropped on Hamilton Books as of recording this yesterday, and you can get it for $11. So,
wow.
yeah, Midnight is very accessible right now, very cheap. Great film. I believe somebody from Squid Game is in that, right? That's how they're marketing it.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Midnight. That's a good one. Anything else on your radar recently?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't bring it out today, but Japan, there was like this erotic dramatic thriller called Tezuka's Barbara, which came out recently from, I have my list. Oh, Third Window.
Oh,
And
nice.
that one's pretty interesting. It's almost like you have this like artist type guy, and he finds a muse, and it kind of goes that route. It's pretty interesting, kind of weird. I really like that one.
Interesting.
And then
Before we go into some current ones again, hold on. You said Third Window. So for those that don't know, Third Window Films, I believe they only do Japanese. Is that correct?
yeah, they've on occasion they'll release a Korean film.
So Third Window Films is ran by one guy who originally was out of the UK. I think he just recently relocated to Asia, actually,
Mm.
and he's running it out of Japan, maybe. But Third Window Films, they are a really great Region B counterpart for pretty much every genre across the board. I mean, a lot of people had never bought from them, and then they put out their release of One Cut of the Dead, and they were the first one to put that out, and a lot of people jumped on that release, and I think it was region free. There
Mm.
you go. So that was one that really put them on the map for a lot of people. But is there something from them that you would recommend that people really seek out because it's a unique thing? Because they put out things like Obayashi films that a lot of
Mm.
places don't.
Yeah, one recent one that came out this year that I really like is Summertime Machine Blues. And it's about a group of I think they're in freshmen in college or something. And they're doing their like little summer thing in at the school, and they find a time machine, and they're like, you know what? We lost the remote control for our air conditioning unit. We can't turn it on. It's freaking hot in here. Let's go back in time one day and find our air controlled remote control. And that's her premise for a time travel movie, and it's really good. It's a comedy, of course, but I thought it was really cool. And there's enough attention to detail where you got to notice little things that go on. But I really like that one.
They have a pretty big fall lined up ahead of them, and
Mm.
I'm real excited for what they got coming out. And then they just did the Funky Forest Warped Forest in the Region B side compared to the Error 4444 in the US, and they're pretty close to identical releases, I believe. I think the Error release has an extra disc, maybe it's a soundtrack or something like that. But
Mm.
yeah, they work with a lot of labels to put out a lot of Asian genre films, and they do great work. They don't get enough support. They did in an interview recently. I think it was with a friend of mine on They Live by Film, and the guy that runs the place, he was saying some of their lesser known titles have literally only ever sold 500 copies, and it is so depressing to hear that there is. I mean, some of these they're literally the only releases in the world on Blu-ray, and they can't get people to buy them. So
Hmm.
keep an eye on Third Window Films. They do really great work. Okay, back to more current watches from you.
Yes. Let's see. We did Japan. We did Korea, Hong Kong. Let's see. Oh well, I really liked Raging Fire, which was Benny Chan's last film with Donnie Yen and Nicholas Che. That's if you want a good recent Hong Kong action flick, I would recommend that definitely.
Nice.
I think there was a Thai horror film called The Maid that came out on Blu-ray fairly recently, maybe last year, and that was really entertaining. Don't even look up the plot. Just watch the movie because it'll surprise you a little bit.
That one is also on Dread Pictures, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was on Hamilton Books for cheap right now too.
Mm,
They Dread Pictures does not a ton, but they've hit some Asian horror in there, and they are pretty much always cheap. You can always find them for like $15 or less. But a lot of these have never been in high definition. So, what are some of the releases that you love from Asian cinema that you're just dying to get one of those next boutique releases?
the ones that are coming out.
Maybe not announced yet, just something that you
Oh,
would love to have.
well, the actually Error 4444 announced they're coming out with Red to Kill and
Yep.
Run and Kill, which are probably two of my favorite Category 3 films of all time. So I'm really looking forward to those, like a lot. Probably above everything else right now.
We've talked about this on one of the other shows previously, but I'm really curious to find out why Juwon has no good release anywhere in the world.
I have no idea. I know there's a lot of films, but ironically, I think the recent Juwon films are significantly more entertaining than the recent Ring films out of Japan. So I would love, I would love a nice box set, just a Blu-ray box set, throw them all in there. Especially like the first two direct-to-video films. Right. They're probably on YouTube still, and I do recommend them definitely. But man, those above all need a good release.
Other than those, what is one of your favorite directors that we haven't talked about tonight? Are there any that spring to mind that you immediately jump to when you're thinking of Asian cinema?
Shinya Sakamoto from Japan. I think just because, I don't know, I'm kind of a, how do I say this? Runtimes are kind of important to me. Like, I like shorter runtimes. So I'm not, there's a lot of films I really like that have long run times, like Love Exposure's 4 hours, and I love that movie. But
there's some long Asian cinema.
Yeah. But, I would say Tsukamoto's, the average runtime for his non-short films, just the ones that are an hour and longer, is probably like 80 minutes.
Yeah.
And like, he could do really weird stuff and not annoy me with it. Like sometimes I watch a weird movie and I just get like annoyed. This is just obnoxious. But he's able to like ride that line of being like really, he could get crazy, but he still keeps it interesting enough to like make me want to keep watching. And I think that's like really kind of unique. And he condenses it into 80 minutes to, an hour and 30 minutes. And I think he's just great.
He obviously got a really great release from Arrow fairly recently. Not all of his films are in there. I believe it was Mondo Macabro. There you go. Mondo Macabro and I think Third Window Films both released one of his. He did Haruko the Goblin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they got releases through both of those. He is obviously a fundamental. And one that I would throw out there after mentioning him is Takeshi Miike. How would you how do you describe Miike to people that have never watched Miike?
I would say for his entire career, he's a director for hire. I don't think he does many passion projects. And what this has done is this has created like a filmography so huge, over 100 movies now. Well, it's still kind of a dodgy number because I think that counts TV episodes and stuff. Right. But whatever, 100 titles. So what you have is somewhat of an inconsistent level of quality. You know what I mean? Like Tsukamoto's consistent in my eyes. But like, but he only has like, 15, 16, feature-length films or whatever.
Right.
But so you're going to have a great inconsistency, and some of Miike's films are atrocious. Terraformers being a great example. But if you like cull it down to even, you could go top 50, but if you cull it down to top 30 and you compare it to any other director's top 30, it's going to be tough to compete with him. I mean, I don't know. I think he's really, and he has a nice variety. I remember back in the day on message boards, back in the mid 2000s, people are like, oh, he's just a splatter director. All his movies are like violent. And it's like, nah, man, he does a nice variety of stuff. I really like him.
I sort of view him as the Asian Fulci a lot of the time, and it really works in terms of sleaze and gore, but also in terms of when he hits, and it hits hard. And he's got an eye for filmmaking. That's undoubted, and you can't really look at his filmography and just say, he'll do any job for $1, because even if he does, he really exceeds the what they expect basically when they're hiring somebody like that. And man, does he kill it.
And I heard he's also very lenient with his actors too. Like he gives them the freedoms. Whereas like I see behind the scenes stuff with Kiyoshi Kurosawa is one of my favorite directors, and he's very particular. Like he'll make somebody reshoot a scene like 10 times with them just like walking across the room, putting a plant on a counter. But I don't think Miike's like that. He's very freewheeling. And the fact that he's kind of like that adds a lot of kind of creativity and uniqueness to his films.
Nice. One genre that I know you love that you have not mentioned yet. Why don't you tell us about the girls with guns genre?
Ugh, yes, man. And I like here's the thing: when I was younger, I became a fan of Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton from their low budget American movies, like China O'Brien, Rage and Honor. And I was like, oh, I like Cynthia Rothrock. And then I got into international film, and I'm like, I looked up. There was like a cheesy Hong Kong action movie called So Close that was released in the 2000s, and that kind of got me into Girls with Guns because people were saying that the older stuff was better. So I started looking it up, and I'm like, oh crap, Cynthia Rothrock's in like half a dozen of these movies.
Right.
And I watched them, and I'm like, wow, like she like annihilates her American stuff. And then I got into like Moon Lee, Yukari Oshima, and I just loved it. It's a different aesthetic and feel with the ladies doing the action in these movies, and it's just so entertaining to watch.
So, anybody that is brand new to Girls with Guns, what do you think are some of the touch points in that genre that people could access fairly easily nowadays?
Well, I would definitely recommend the In the Line of Duty films, particularly the first four. I'm hoping there's going to be a box set of that coming out. But you got Cynthia Rothrock in there in the first one. You got Michelle Yeoh in the first two, and then Cynthia Khan takes over from there, and you get Donnie Yen's in there, Hiroyuki Sanada's in there in a film, so it's really good. Iron Angels is one. You may be able to still find the DVD on eBay. Iron Angels is really good. That's got Moon Lee and Yukari Oshima. I would say another one might be what's another good one that I'm thinking of? Oh, well, Angel Terminators 2 is hard to find. I think it was on YouTube. But yeah, those are some of the ones to start with.
You brought up Michelle Yeoh, so I have to ask. I'm sure you saw Everything Everywhere All at Once this
I
year.
have not yet.
You have not. Amazing.
No.
Oh, I think that comes out. I want to say next Friday, and I'm really eager to see what you think. It is my review of it, and I'm just stammering everywhere thinking of this movie. I saw it when I went to LA. I thought that I had missed my opportunity to see it in theaters, and I show up in LA, and they are showing it at the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. And I said, I have nothing else to do today. This is the perfect opportunity. And it was cheap as hell. It was like $11 to go see it. So I went down there and watched it. I think there were 3 of us in the entire theater because I think it was a little over a month that passed when it came out. And my review walking out of that theater was, is this the best movie I've ever seen? I don't know, but when I watch it again, I might say yes.
Wow. All right.
It is an incredible film, and I can't wait to see your review on it.
All right.
So we started talking about genre films earlier, and obviously in Asian cinema, we have horror playing a huge part of everything. And you have these different eras. You've got the super unique ones in like the late 50s to 60s. You've got you've got a lot of like the Gojira and everything else that happened in the 60s and 70s and a little later on. But on top of that, then the 80s and 90s came and really threw everything just out the window, started over again. And then there's this new modern side since probably around 2000 that is very realistic for the most part, very good. A lot of it is just, I don't know, it hits really hard sometimes. So I'm curious, what do you think are some of the better genre films going back through horror through all of these eras?
Right.
I know that's a lot to ask.
I got my Excel schedule right here, baby. I'm ready to rock and roll. Back in the day, I would say, if you want some good Japanese classics, I think The Ghost of Yotsuya, very interesting film from 1959. You may be able to find this on YouTube still, a silent film called A Page of Madness from 1926. And it was, it's kind of creepy. And it's about basically like a mental asylum. And it's kind of avant-garde in some ways. Really cool flick, if you want to go way back. And then obviously some of the big ones from the 60s are like Kwaidan and Odibaba. The Philippines started making some hay in the 60s with stuff like the Blood Drinkers and stuff like that, if you want to mix it up. And then if you get into like I would say, one of my favorites, if you like Kwaidan and you could track down, where is it here? It's the Snow Woman, Ghost Story of the Snow Witch from 1968. If you like the Snow Woman segment in Kwaidan, you could track like this full length film down. It's really good. And then like the 70s, it's tough. They're real tough to find from the 70s. Obviously, Haozu is a big one from Japan. A lot of them are tough to find though. And then the 80s, you get like the popularity of home video. So you have like a lot, like an upping of like gore and like exploitative type stuff too, especially from Japan. But I mean, Hong Kong started really churning out stuff in this era. Boxer Zone was one of my favorites. So that one's very highly recommended. And then in Japan, you got stuff like Tetsuo the Iron Man is a good one from the 80s to check out. And then the 90s is before Ringu. You got some really good gore films that I hope somebody releases.
That would be nice.
Let's see. We got, where is it? Oh, Rubber's Lover. It's this film. It's black and white. And it's real low budget. And it's like body horror, psychic, like violence type stuff. It was really cool. I really enjoy that one. Naked Blood is a huge one from Japan. Nasty. but it's good. Real nasty. And then post Ring, you got a lot of people, it's one of my things is that there was a huge variety post Ring. All right. A lot of people focus on the Ghost Girl stuff, but I would say like probably the mid 2000s, you used to have a ton of movies to choose from. I mean, one of my favorites is A Tale of Two Sisters and a lot of Kiyoshi Kurosawa stuff like Pulse. I just love. And, you could just keep going forever. I mean, it's depending on the years and the country of origin, there's just so much stuff to watch. I mean, the 2010s even. I did a video comparing 2013 versus 2003 in Asian horror, and I think 2013 was actually a far better year overall. If you want something that's kind of like art house, that's recent from Japan, I think Miss Zombie's really interesting. It's glacially paced, but I think it's really good. And so it's tons of stuff to choose from.
I kind of feel bad for anybody that hasn't dove into these because there are so many recommendations in this video. So you mentioned Boxer's Omen, which brings up a lot of the current releases that are coming out of Eureka and 88 and Arrow. So I don't think I've ever heard just a straight opinion. How do you feel about Shaw Brothers and everything that they were able to put out? And what are you feeling about all of the current releases that we're getting?
I'm a big fan of Shaw Brothers. The thing, for some reason, though, for the classic martial arts kung fu stuff, I watch them in kind of a rotation, but the rotation is a little bit more stretched out for me. So some of the ones that I really like some of like Dirty Ho, I haven't even seen in like 10 years, even though I really like it. For some reason, I'm drawn, like when I have a hard day at work and I come home, I'm drawn more to like the contemporary urban Hong Kong action flicks from like the 80s and 90s. But still, I really like the Shaw Brothers stuff a lot. And I have the set that came out fairly recently, and I'm looking forward to the second version of that, which I think is supposed to have Boxer's Omen. So I'm pumped for that. And I really like the releases that we've been have. I mean, I find a backlog of stuff. It's given me a lot of freedom in my individual movie reviews, because sometimes it's kind of tough because I'm like, I go to my collection, I'm like, ooh, I'll review this movie. I'm like, I better check its availability, and I check, and it's like DVD's out of print, like nobody can find it.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm not going to put a separate review out for that, so I guess I can't review it. But at least like these recent releases are giving me the opportunity to review really obscure stuff that's been coming out, so I'm really happy about it.
I have to imagine that like the advent, not really the advent, but the popularity that's suddenly coming into play with primarily Netflix with like K-dramas has to be adding to some of that, with some things getting released that were really great back in the day and just had no accessibility for the last like 10 years. So
yeah, South Korea needs a lot more exposure though, especially the 2000 stuff that's been out of print. I'm hoping
Exactly.
somebody kind of starts churning that out.
Nostalgia seems to come in like 20-year intervals, so
Yeah.
maybe we're about to hit some of
Yeah.
that. So you talked about Shaw Brothers and the stuff that you like from them. What about the different eras of like martial arts films? Because we've got the just straight classic martial arts. You've got the wuxia films. You've got a lot of the like straight kung fu films, all leading up to stuff currently like the Raid. What is your overview of all of that, and what are some of the ones that you just always go back to?
Yeah, I think it took me there was a few subgenres that it took me a little while to appreciate, and one of those were the wuxia films. I didn't even see like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon when it came out. I watched that after, and some of the ones from the early '90s, stuff like the Swordsman trilogy, the Bride with White Hair, stuff like that. I had trouble enjoying the first time I saw them, just because they're so some of those Hong Kong films from the 80s and 90s, it's like they were made on a different planet,
Yep.
and I couldn't process what I was seeing. But I went back and watched them again a handful of years later, and I really enjoyed the creativity and just the use of practical effects. Like the whole flying cloth through the air appears in every one of those freaking movies, and I like it now, you know? But yeah, that one, it took me a little while to appreciate, but I really like those. The old school martial arts stuff, I very easily got into, even though it took a little while for me to actually start watching them. I think I saw Master of the Flying Guillotine on TV when I was younger, and I enjoyed it, and the Bruce Lee stuff. But I really started to explore it when I was older. But some of my favorites are the blend of martial arts and urban action combined. I like a lot. That's just why Girls with Guns stuff. Some of the Donnie Yen stuff from like contemporary years, where you have a mix. Same with the Raid. It starts off as a gunplay a Raid movie, and then it shifts to a martial arts movie midway through. So I really like those probably the most.
I gotta ask, following that, the Raid or the Raid 2?
I'd say the Raid 2 by an inch.
I think the Raid 2 is the better film, but I think I would rather watch the Raid.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I just had something click when you said that, and I forgot. When we're looking at all of this, are there any specific actors that you find yourself drawn to?
Yeah. One of my favorites is a Japanese actor by the name of Hiroshi Abe. And I saw some of his comedies back in the day. And he was in a TV show called Trick, where he played a college professor of physics, I believe. And this girl amateur magician who's like down on her luck financially gets like an offer to they basically team up and do they go to different regions of Japan where someone is claiming to be like clairvoyant or a psychic, or they can do these supernatural things, and they go in and they break it down and prove that they're a con artist. And that's the premise for the show. And he was just phenomenal in that. He's just hilarious with his comedic timing. So he's one of my favorites. I would say for Korea, I really like Lee Sung-kyun, who was in just a ton of stuff. He was in like that pasta show that I was talking about, and he's just fantastic. And then in terms of actresses, I really like Hikari Mitsushima in Japan. She was in Love Exposure, and she's been in some stuff after that. And then from China, Zhou Xun, who kind of like started off in like indie films and then got more popular and did more mainstream stuff. And I think she's just phenomenal.
Criterion. We mentioned them a couple times early on, and they've done a handful of major releases. I mean, we've got the Wong Kar-wai box set. We've got all of the Kurosawa individual releases. We've got Lone Wolf and Cub. We've got Zatoichi. We've got the Samurai trilogy. If somebody were to be diving into physical media and could maybe get two, what do you think is the first one they go to, and what do you think is the second one you suggest?
In terms of box sets, like
anything from Criterion, because they surprisingly they've done really great stuff with a lot of the Asian work that they've done. I mean, like me personally, when people have asked me of this, I have never suggested the Godzilla box set because I can't stand the way that that's built. I feel like they botched it, and we're going to get some better releases here soon. Um,
Yeah,
anyways,
if they came out with a Haysayer, I'd still get it because
right,
I love the hay or the I love the middle section of those films are great. But I would say, man, the one that really came out that I was really happy about was House because I saw it on some freaking like video search of Miami bootleg DVD like back in the late 2000s, and I'm like, ain't nobody gonna watch this movie.
right.
It's too bad a movie like this, no one will ever watch it. And Criterion released it a few years later, and it got popular, and a lot of people know about it. Obviously, like, I mean, if they still produced or if they came out with like that Akira Kurosawa collection in Blu-ray form, I would say that's one that you probably should check out. You
Yep.
know what I mean? I don't even have the DVD one myself. So even if they did, I might even pick it up. But in terms of, I'm trying to think of any. Oh, I mean, they're Eclipse sets. I bought a
Yeah.
bunch of them like discounted fairly recently on Amazon because I had some Amazon gift certificates, and I bought a bunch of the Eclipse sets. Totally, I would if you could like do a marathon of the Eclipse films, so they do them on different directors and everything. They covered Ozu, I think, Naruse, I think, a bunch of dudes. That would be a really good place to start.
I mentioned Criterion because the Criterion sale should be starting this weekend, and I know a lot of people are going to be looking at that in the next month. So, in terms of those releases that they've done, I also want to highlight a couple that we haven't mentioned. Lady Snowblood, Arrow put that out previously, but that's you're clearly going to get a great release from that from Criterion in the U.S. Now, I am curious. We've got some modern ones coming out. We've got some Bong Joon Ho. We've got I think there's one more. Anyways, are there any modern films that you hope that they give something like the Criterion treatment here soon?
Criterion modern films.
Something like what they did with Parasite.
Yeah. I would like Miss Zombie to get a Criterion release. I mean, it's an art house horror film that's shot in black and white. I mean, it's right up their freaking alley. I'd love to see that get a Criterion release.
Didn't that get an Arrow release?
I think it was some other distributor. It was kind of like an off-key distributor may have released that.
Redemption did it in the US.
Ah, okay. Yep. But another recent one that's like, let me fire up my Excel sheet here. Do a very quick filter, and let's go for recent years. So what do we want here? Let's do the last 5 years. All right, so we're gonna go to 21, 20. Let's just do 3 years. So I would say, Criterion. That's not really Criterion worthy. Ooh, here's one. Shinobu Yaguchi, who is and it's probably the distributor in Japan's fault for asking for too much, but
right.
He's my favorite comedy director of all time. So there, Criterion's been releasing some Juzo Itami comedies, Tampopo, The Funeral.
Yeah.
Oh man, Shinobu Yaguchi comedy box set, baby, and everyone would love his movies. Like Swing Girls is like the most likable film I've ever seen in my life. So it's like I would love to see a box set of his stuff because even his last film, Dance with Me, was great. So I mean, that would be a big request. Let's see what else we got here. There's some of the recent Korean coming of age films. There's a film called The House of Us, right up Criterion's alley. If they wanted to release that, definitely. Those are a few big ones.
Right. Last thing, I think, before I ask anything that we missed, if we could go through just country by country, and you give like a top 3 from that country that you think people should look out for.
Okay.
Let's do it. So let's go South Korea first.
Just any era.
Your favorite 3 South Korean films.
Wow. All right. Well, the first one's kind of easy. A Tale of Two Sisters. I always go to that one, number 1.
Really great Region B release from Arrow on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Second, You know what? I'm going to go with my favorite romantic comedy probably from there. And it's a tough competition. But I'm going with Couples from 2011, which
Nice.
is because it's a change in perspective film. So you have the romantic comedy stuff. You got a bag of cash that goes missing. And you're trying to track who got it and what's going on. So it has like more than just the romantic comedy stuff, but it's awesome. Tale of Two Sisters, Couples. And let's go with number 3. I already did Kim Ji-woon. I don't want to go with another one of his. I don't want to pick Old Boy. That's too easy, right? Let's do The Chaser. Let's do The Chaser from 2008. Pretty hard-nosed thriller.
Nice. Nice wide genres there too on all 3 of them.
Yeah.
So we did South Korea. Next obvious one to me, Japan. Top 3 Japan.
Cure's number 1. That's easy. But after that,
and I think that has a really nice Region B from Eureka, correct?
I think so, yeah. Can't go with Kiyoshi Kurosawa again for number 2. Let's mix it up here. Let's do Confessions from 2010. Awesome movie. Confessions. And let's do Swing Girls, number 3. One of my favorite Japanese comedies.
Nice. And speaking of comedy, let's keep it with some funny stuff and go Hong Kong. Hong Kong can be beyond off the wall.
Indeed. All right, this is going to get tough. I would say Hard Boiled, Infernal Affairs, and throw in The Boxer's Omen.
Nice. So we did Hong Kong. What about mainland China?
Green Tea's number 1. It's a romance. It's my favorite. Let's see here. Green Tea. What other mainland? That one's Taiwan. I think Drug War counts as a mainland film. That's a Johnny To film. If Drug War counts as mainland, there's some co-productions that gets weird.
Right.
But I'm picking Drug War if that one counts. That's a really good flick. And City of Life and Death, one of the best war films I've ever seen. The movie's awesome.
Taiwan. I know you just mentioned them. That's perfect.
Yeah, Taiwan's tough to find. If you can find The Passage on DVD, it's from 2004. Really good movie. Kwai-Lin May's in that. She's another favorite actress of mine. Let's do... there's another one. Let's do... it's tough. You know what? I can't do another Kwai-Lin May film. I'll pick another one. Lust Caution. Big one.
There we go.
Big one. Even though the Academy rejected it because technically they didn't consider it a Taiwanese movie. Third one from Taiwan. Let's do... This one's tough. Recent one. Man Monsters. Dumb title. Really good movie.
That I think that got an RLJE release and came out from Shudder. Let's see. Who should be next? Let's go Thailand.
Yeah, all right. A lot of genre films I watch. They do come out with some like art house stuff, but I'm not as big with their art house stuff. I'm going I don't know, Unbox too easy. Let's do Phobia 2, which is an anthology horror film. I really like it. A drama, Bad Genius, about a high school girl who cheats on an exam, and it's almost like a heist movie, the way it goes down. I highly recommend Bad Genius. I think it might be on Netflix still or something.
Nice.
That's really good. And then one more. Let's do... How about 13 Game of Death? It's a thriller about a guy who gets a message, and it's like, if you continue to meet these challenges, you get like an insane amount of money. And it tests like how far he's willing to go to get that money. So that's a good one.
Huh. I feel like I know that one.
It had a remake.
Okay, that could be right. Let's see. We haven't talked any Filipino. Do you have any Filipino, Rex?
Yeah. A recent one is Birdshot. Awesome movie. If it's still on Netflix, you got to check that one out. That one's really good. Let's see. What other ones here? The Road is a horror film from 2011 that I think is really quite good. And then, I don't know, some of the other stuff I like, people don't like. There was a
That's the
recent
whole
one.
point.
Yeah. I mean, I really like. Nah, I can't pick that one. Same director. There's one called. Where is it?
You don't have to make it so hard for yourself.
Where is it? Oh, The Ghost Bride is a recent horror film that I thought was pretty good. That's on Amazon, I think.
Last specific country, we got to go with Indonesia.
The Raid 2. I can't pick The Raid then. Come on. And the night comes through. I can't pick that. The Forbidden Door.
If anybody hasn't seen The Raid and The Raid 2, you really should watch both of them.
The Forbidden Door. I love it.
And that one just came out from Severin, right?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And then, no, that one's got eco. Get a variety here. Ooh, all right. Maybe I do another horror film. No. There was another one that came out. If it's still on Netflix, watch it. Where is it? It's one with Julia Estelle. Letters from Prague. It's a really good drama.
Interesting. Okay, so now finally, is there, 3 from kind of everywhere else? Because we hit a lot of the heavy hitters. Are there any others that stick out that you would throw out there?
Let's do. Ooh, this one's kind of tough.
If not, that's okay.
If you want a good action movie, there's one from Vietnam called Fury, which came out fairly recently. So that one's good. Mongolia, there's one I think called Cave of the Yellow Dog, really interesting, like art house drama. And then there's one from I could go to Malaysia maybe. Malaysia, there was another action flick that came out recently called Wira, Wira, and I thought that was a good action flick.
Nice. To sum up, now that we've literally given everybody just homework for days with these, is there anything that you would like to sort of, as cliche as this is going to sound, like the ambassador of Asian cinema for people that have just never dove in? What do you want to leave everybody with?
I would say there's a wide variety of stuff, and if you do a little research, look into it, I'm sure you'll find something or a variety of things that you will enjoy if you give it a chance.
There's literally billions of people that have lived in these cultures, and they have made some incredible cinema. And not to get too Bong Joon-ho worshipy, but his quote about if you can just get over the couple inches of subtitles at the bottom of the screen, you will find a massive world of cinema waiting for you. And on that note, I want to say, Eric, thank you for your time. I know we've had almost an hour, and this has been incredible. Now I have to go back and rewatch this and take notes myself because I've not seen probably more than half of these. So I appreciate you. I appreciate all of your work. I appreciate your channel. Link is in the description below. If you are somehow not one of the people subscribed to him, please subscribe to him. He does incredible work, puts out like 3 reviews a week right now?
Yeah. They're pretty basic reviews, but I'm not gonna blow your mind with insight, but I will give you some recommendations.
And that's the thing, that it's a lot of the time it's films that you've either never heard of or they're ones that maybe you've heard of in passing, and it's just enough to go, God damn, now I really want to see that movie, and you will seek it out because Eric knows his shit.
Or you'll say, man, that sounds terrible. I'm not gonna watch it.
I got to admit, I did that. For one of you did the series on one of the years in horror, and there's like 3 40-minute videos about that year or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh man, there are some bad sounding movies.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for your time. As we always say on here, from one collector to all of you, have a good night.
Thank you, sir.